we started the film, and I said, our film company, and I said, the only way I'm interested in being a part of a film company is if we can do, or I can do, initiatives that allow people to put their energy someplace after they see the film. For instance, we were doing an education film, and Sir Ken Robinson, who is a wonderful education icon, and his daughter Kate were executive producers on the film. And unfortunately, in the middle of it, he passed away of liver cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, now what? I mean, the whole plan for me being involved was that, we could take this out into the community and say, okay, let's figure out ways that we can address this. And that goes to Viktor Frankl's responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. We've turned over responsibility to these systems, but ultimately we are responsible for our lives, for our communities, for what we put in the world. And so Kate Robinson introduced me to Elliot Washer. And Elliot is an educator of 52 years. He started an education organization that has changed the lives of tens of thousands of kids by honoring who they are, giving them dignity, and started a company called Big Picture Learning, which operates in public schools. But you can't grow public schools. So when I met him, he's like, I've been trying to do big picture learning without the school for years. And I just looked at him and he showed me what he had proposed, this program called Outlearners, about getting kids connected to people in the community around their interest. Let them explore. If they need to go to college to get where they need to go, great. But if they don't, let them figure it out with the community being able to support them. And so anyway, we formed Be Unbound, mm-hmm. which, does that. We now have 24 pilots. And so these things keep going and going and going. So then I'm at a family event, and I'm saying, oh, everyone's joking about the fact that I own a film company and I don't, really watch movies. And then they're laughing because I also own a restaurant. I don't cook and I'm not a foodie. I just believe in people, and I supported things, not having the desire to have whatever that was, but because I felt very pulled and connected to whatever that cause was. So anyway, so here I am doing all these different things. He was doing a documentary, which we'll talk about later, called The Friendship Bench, that was based on the TED Talk. And that's how I got introduced to Dixon. And I'll talk about that later. And so here I am. I'm I'm doing these things I never imagined. I don't know what I'm doing 3 to 4 months from now. It unfolds. I've learned to trust that. And life, having my children and stepping into who I really was, just changed my life. It opened up, and synchronicity happens.
Synchronicity happens
when you align with really who you are meant to be, and it's just I literally, my 60s are the greatest time of my life. I mean, it's just so fun. So
I love it so much. I'm excited to talk to you about Dixon's work.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Before we do that, I definitely want to talk about that internal strength. Well, and I know you were condensing your bio, and that was still really amazing. So thank you for giving us a snapshot into what you've done to have synchronicity, to explore, and to be in alignment. And then ultimately, as Viktor Frankl, as a fan of his also, just looking for transcendence and mm-hmm. being in a place of alignment and truth, and then your purpose. And as we talk about purpose, yesterday we spoke about it, but it's to find it, but then to give it away and give your gifts. And I love the gifts you're giving to parents and to people that really need permission. So yesterday when we had our discussion about the podcast, we spoke about how women are incredibly powerful, but sometimes need a nudge to know of their power. And rather than looking at a woman and looking at her and saying, oh, I couldn't do that, seeing someone like you validates the power within everyone to me. I say, well, this is proof that following your dream and following your heart is your superpower. So tell me, what was that moment, and tell our listeners really, what was that moment where your internal strengths became more than the trappings of the life that really led you to say, all right, I'm moving? What was that, other than physically being ill? What else was that gave you bravery? What was it that gave you
Yes,
bravery?
and I think it really isn't. There were many times where it's almost like I'm on a road with fog, and I don't know, but I'm sensing something that I get excited about, I get concerned about, and I think it really comes down to there's 8 billion people on this planet. Not one is the same. Not one. And this again goes back to Viktor Frankl's work. We are each here. We're each a very unique puzzle piece that fits into some ultimate puzzle that we don't know, right? But we matter. And I think it was really step by step realizing that when people say, what do you do? Well, what I do in every situation I'm in is to try and contribute who I am to that situation. And that slowly, over time, gave me a lot of confidence in contributing. And it might be sitting with a friend who's going through something distressful and be an empathetic listener. And in other cases, like my work with, the Viktor Frankl Institute of America, it was, wow, we really need to put information out there for modern audiences who don't have time to read all the books, but want to understand about meaning. So developing that. And so as we do these things that really to find ourselves, we have to lose ourselves. So humans have eyes that look out and senses all around us. We are not made to look at ourselves. The only time we actually historically, before cameras and mirrors and all of that, would pay attention is if we were injured or something was going on. We are made to orient outward. That's how to engage with the world. And you think of an industrialized, mechanistic society, and we're actually encouraged to compare ourselves, to compete, to constantly see how we fit in, not
line
belong.
up. Right.
How we rank, what validates our worthiness. And when we can begin, I say one of the best parts about getting older is that you can shed the shoulds and supposed tos based on your values. That if they're not value aligned, we can let the shoulds go. We can let the supposed tos go because we intuitively know. So the inner strength that comes from learning to trust. So the 3 steps are listen to your inner wisdom. My latest blog is just about this because a physicist described it, and it's certainly Frankl's. Listen to your conscience. Take a moment. It doesn't have to be meditating for an hour. It could be 5 minutes. It could be a quiet walk. It could be in the shower. It pops in. Listen, and then here comes the hard part. Trust.
Yeah,
Trust.
That's the hard part. We have so much stimulation coming in. So to be contemplative and to slow down, back to the icebreaker, which was, what are you learning? And that is to be in the moment and to let the messages come, let the nudges come. What are the nudges? What is your intuition telling you? And then everyone knows they've done this. They're like, I knew it, and I didn't listen.
Absolutely.
Or this was a great idea and I missed that opportunity, or you know what I should have done. And then how many of those shoulda, woulda, couldas did we ignore that would have led to a beautiful serendipitous path that would unfold into something greater? And I think for me, I'm coming into the growth of your second prime, the goal of removing shame from age and saying, ladies, you are lionesses. Please bring your gift to the world and be there. Lean in. Don't disappear. Don't take the societal role that's been assigned based on appearance or essentially that physical self. But think of your aura and your contribution and the gift that you're here to give. So, the 3 things are, one more time.
Listen, trust. But the most important
Yeah.
is act.
Yeah.
So I call myself a cliff jumper. People laugh because I don't know that these things are going to work, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. It's. I'm not a cook, but people who love to cook, they throw it together and like, oops, I put too much this. It's approaching life like that, and I think which makes it an adventure. I had a wonderful experience last night, being invited to a book club of women who were all in their second prime, and they were professional women, and they were mothers, and they were all these things. And my book, Parenting from the Passenger Seat, had resonated with so many of them because it validated what they thought. It's kind of when I found Viktor Frankl. I read his work, and it was like, this is my life. This is my value. He put it into perspective and words. And the same thing is how much we've dimmed our light for this machine, to feed this machine that isn't nurturing to
or
the
even
human.
just agreed with the machine.
Agreed
like
with the
just
machine.
agreed with it and thought, well, this is it. This is how it works. We have our kids. We have this, and then
Yes.
bye.
Yes, that we have to do, but
Step
it's very
aside.
linear.
Yeah.
It's very programmed, and it's very, most of all, which is the most detrimental, is it's standardized.
Right. The service. So I really believe in finding purpose. I know that this is aligned with meaning, and that we all have it, the 8 billion of us. And my perspective, and the cool thing about the book I'm writing, Your Second Prime, is that it also ladders up to the science of it. So when you're in alignment, sharing your gift with the world, your physiology is in flow. Your immune system is top notch. You have cognitive clarity. You have less pain. We have this natural opioid pathway in our body. You don't need to numb yourself because you're actually high on your own gift to the world. Yesterday when we were talking, I felt like I was levitating because our spirits, our light, are aligned in the goal of being the change we seek in the world. And so for listeners, if you're sitting there thinking, but I don't know my purpose, or I don't have that path, or I'm curious about it, what do you say about those that have not discovered, or not letting things unfold, or it hasn't landed yet? Tell me more.
Yes, and I think that it comes in many ways and many forms. So it's not like you have to do anything. I mean, it could come from a relationship that you want to make an effort to, your purpose could be to be that important. You could be a blind my mother's 94. She doesn't see well. She has such a role in her community of, creating poker games and she's COPD and diabetic, but she transcends all of that.
Because we're the light, not our vessel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then that is super important. And I think that when I work with young people, I mentor a lot of young people who literally, what do I do? They've been trained since a young age to not listen to themselves, to sit down, to conform, to listen to authority, not eat when they're hungry, not go to the bathroom when they want to. So we start with the fact that you don't go find it out there. So the first thing is your purpose. And again, there's many purposes in life that can transition. Maybe as you get older, it does narrow down, but we never really know. Everything I do relates to this bridge building between the mechanistic world and community engagement. And so it comes in many, many different forms, but that's probably the overarching theme. But to say that it's not like you're not in the right place to go get it. I mean, if you feel a pull towards going somewhere, that's a different thing. But it starts with, I say, what do you care about? Are you worried about plastic in the ocean? Are you worried about, or how do you express yourself? Do you like to paint? Do you like to do art? It doesn't have to be career. We're so job focused. We're so being plugged in because this is how we've designed our society, that you have to provide for yourself. And I think this is where we've gone really
a
arrive.
field.
Yes. And so we know. So the first thing is to just quiet down and notice things that excite you, things that make you frustrated, whatever it might be, and begin to be curious, just like you're talking about those things, and do one thing. It could
Yeah.
be volunteering, going to a lecture, watching a YouTube show, listening to this podcast, and getting
Right.
your interest sparked. It doesn't have to be, I've got to find my giant purpose.
Right.
It's something that unfolds by the tiny steps, and then watch once you're aligned with who you are.
Watch what happens.
Watch what happens. Get out of the way, and then you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, what we
I
talked
know.
about at the beginning." You're trying to say, "Okay, pull it back."
Well, and I was thinking about that. I think that people are like waiting for the purpose to come, and almost like a religious experience, or that there'll be an awakening. But what I have found in purpose is doing work that interests you, that leads you. Then it's, as you had said earlier, it unfolds. And I often find the obstacle is the way. So I'm a
Yes.
stoic. I like, yay,
Me
I
too.
didn't know
Yes,
that.
another thing in common.
another
Yes,
thing-
yes. I love the Daily Stoic.
The daily
Yeah.
stoic. And Marcus Aurelius, we ever talk about like a dinner you want, I was like, well, Marcus Aurelius is there,
Yes.
But ultimately that the obstacle is the way. And so for me in particular, your second prime came from that I had fear about aging. I didn't like what was on the horizon, and there was nothing positive for women that I could see that wasn't cliche, that wasn't sort of trying to just be young and say, oh, age doesn't matter. But really saying, wait a second, this is when we are really wise. We are more grounded in experience. We've had those experiences, and that's why all of a sudden when I have a lovely friend who's turning 40, and I was like, oh my gosh, 40s are fantastic. And she's like, really? Yeah, secrets out that getting older is really awesome. We need society to recognize that, and that's through the behaviors of being awesome in your 60s and 70s. And showcasing women like you to say, oh my goodness, you are the most vibrant thing I've ever seen, and you're in your 60s. This is fabulous. We have work to do. We have work to do.
We have opportunity.
And
we have opportunity to learn to support
An
each
obligation.
other. And yes, it's a responsibility.
It's a responsibility.
It is
Yep.
responsibility. But I think this is where we need to retribe ourselves in supporting each other, in making sure that we can and do follow the things that we value and things that are important. And Viktor Frankl would say you find meaning in three ways. One, by your creative values, the things that you put in the world, your deeds, your work. Experiential, which is the loving of another human being, the being in nature and experiencing a beautiful sunset, just appreciating that you take in from the world. And the last, which is the hardest. So suffering, you don't need suffering to find meaning. I mean, suffering's a part of life, so you're going to have it. It's more how you approach it. And when you can't control a situation, you have someone die that you were deeply close to, or you have an illness, or, you're in a war zone. It's your attitude to respond that's in your control. And that's it. Fate is huge. Here's our little tiny dot next to it that is our ability to decide who we're going to be in that situation. If you have cancer, how do you model what that means to face it instead of curling up and saying, this is terrible, whatever? What has the world done to me? It's the opposite. What can I share with the world based on who I am that improves my community and my family?
Absolutely. And that's where Stoicism comes in for me, is that, nothing is nor good nor bad unless you deem it so. And then when something is out of your control, then the next question always for me is, what will I learn from it then? What virtue does this require me to pull up, to bring in, and to say, okay, well, this is what you're here to learn, and then what you're here to share.
Right.
And that has freed me from so much. I have to just say, if anyone is curious about Stoicism, it's really a great framework, and I'd love to see Stoicism for women. That's like the next book I want to write, even though I haven't
Sounds
finished this
good.
one.
I'll buy it.
I got to get the first one off,
Yes.
off and printed and all that. But so this is going to be part 2 of the podcast with Pam Roy because we couldn't stop talking. It was so good. And what I wanted to dive into and focus on is and thank you for introducing me to Dixon. How do you say his last name?
Chabanda.
Chapanda. Thank you for introducing me to his work. I am very inspired by it. You sent me the TED Talk, and I was, of course, a puddle. And I work in healthcare. My career is in healthcare and health ethics and health equity. And healthcare providers, people in vulnerable situations really resonate with me. And so I was thinking of this from the healthcare provider standpoint, as well as the underserved patient, the vulnerable patient populations that we have around the globe in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. And this is where actually Stoicism comes in, because he saw a problem with this beautiful solution. So may you introduce this to our listeners, because this is so cool and so fabulous.
Yes. So another thing that unfolded that I fell into rather being, so as I mentioned before, my brother-in-law was doing this documentary. I was familiar with the TED Talk and so inspired by it. So I became an executive producer with him. And one of my missions was not to put films out without giving a place for people to take the energy that would be evoked or the emotions that would be evoked and put them somewhere to do something.
That third
Yes.
leg of the stool of act.
Yes.
Here's your opportunity to act. If this
Yes.
moves you, this is where you go.
Right. And there's many solutions. So I'm not saying any of the things I'm doing are the solution. I just feel that it's important to contribute a solution, not just say, here's a problem and
Complain about it,
go
yeah.
rely on other people to do something about it.